Hey everybody, this is Rydo and we're back to video game news. Today is Friday, December 26th, also known as the day after Christmas. Uh, Christmas for me was completely uneventful, and so I really don't have anything to say there. Like, I literally didn't do anything, just slept in, I suppose, is the thing that I would say I did the most of, is just sleeping. Uh, so yeah, it's been a awful year as far as consumerism goes, and the idea of recording, of buying stuff, and it looks like we're probably set for the next 2 to 4 to possibly 10 to 30 years of there not being any kind of good deals to buy anything, and or there just not being any money to buy anything. Which, yeah, maybe that's an issue. Maybe it isn't. Maybe this is just a correction back to another depression. So yeah, I've just spent the past couple days doing Vampire Survivors. I did a little bit of work on these vertical live streams. It still is very experimental. It is an interesting thought. Should you experiment during Christmas when you know you're not likely going to get any views anyways? Or should you actively seek out the experimentation? Really should be done behind the scenes, and then January 1st would have been the time to really throw out new content. But yeah, I realize now what is causing this scene to flash. It's when I'm hovering over Firefox and trying to find a specific browser. That's when it shows the desktop. Yeah, so I've just been playing Vampire Survivors. I'm in the third, possibly even fourth act of it. There is a lot of game in Vampire Survivors that it does not tell you about at the beginning. It feels like a very simplistic game to start off with, where you only have a left analog stick, and then by the time you're at the fourth act, there is just so much more to it there, and they introduce a shopkeeper element also, so they do a really good job of making money still matter, which is something I didn't think was going to happen. I thought by the time you were done with the third act you would have bought all the upgrades and then money would just not matter. But with the shopkeeper, you can always do something with your money if you have enough money. I think 19 hours into the game. I think there is easily another 5 hours in it, probably 10, possibly 20 or 30, before you even start talking about DLC, because of how much it unlocks. There is still an issue in that it just kind of ends, a lot of runs do, at the 5 or 10 minute mark of a 30-minute or a 15-minute run, because if you get everything upgraded in the runs, you become invincible until you aren't, and you almost always are going to be invincible, at which point you can basically put the controller down and just let it play out. And that is why the levels, at least all the levels I've seen, have these time limits in them, and they have the ability to make it more difficult. It's because it will just not really I'm losing my train of thought. I'm sorry, I'm looking at the ticker and I shouldn't really be paying attention to that. But yeah, without a time limit, you potentially could have a character in Vampire Survivors become immortal and just sit there for hours upon hours and nothing would happen. You wouldn't be able to evolve anything. You might get a ton of gold, which might be helpful. And yeah, you kill a ton of enemies, which might be helpful. There's still about 50 unlocks for me to unlock, and still a ton of enemies I just don't think I've even seen, because there's going to be harder levels that unlock, I'm pretty sure. But because I was playing Vampire Survivors, I really didn't do too much on the vertical streaming tweaks. I should have done a lot more, and I just didn't feel like it. This chair still is not as comfortable as I would like it to be. It still, I think, perhaps just sinks in, and I think it's more my body is the problem than the chair. Yeah, and there is an argument to thinking reconsidering building a base and putting a swivel under it, because yeah, the idea of building a base and putting a swivel on it would also put it higher up than than where it is, which it's a pretty low chair. But yeah, so I've just manually adjusted the fonts on the vertical here to make it a little bit easier to read. I don't know how much more it is easier to read, and I've added some extra margin, which also I found in NVIDIA you can make a custom resolution, and so I've made a custom resolution that is 1080 by 1920, and that is what is being displayed on my screen now. And I think that made everything a lot easier than trying to do it through ViolentMonkey JavaScript injection scripts, or CSS injection scripts as part of ViolentMonkey scripts. So yeah, now the screen is just that 1920 by 1080 resolution. I probably need to make a new thumbnail, which we'll see if that ever happens, that is vertical, because the processing of these videos and these live streams is not particularly great, and it doesn't make a particularly good thumbnail. And that might be a problem with vertical streams, is that you may not be able to really inject a thumbnail into one of these. And yeah, in this setup, a horizontal stream concept would have to be something we do completely later when I build a new computer, whenever I get around to that. But yeah, the general idea is going to be to just increase the font size and ignore the pictures. Thumbnails in particular are designed to be pretty small, so something like Monster Hunter Wilds here might be pretty impossible to read, whereas Dota 2 is nice and easy to read at this size. But for all of our news stories, I've just turned off all the custom work, custom CSS, and I need to redo it all because there was a lot of manipulation happening based on the not 1080 by 1920 but 1920 by 1080 widescreen resolution, and my skills on changing that CSS was not robust enough to survive completely changing the resolution on the screen. I'll try to do a better job next time. One of the advantages of changing the resolution on the monitor, though, is you can see that the pop-up here is popping up in the right place, whereas it was popping up to the left of the screen. One of the disadvantages of going vertical on one thing is that I basically have to exit out of OBS and restart it every time I switch between doing vertical live streams and recording widescreen game footage. Which, yes, it still makes a lot more sense to go and do widescreen game footage. I've also decided, at least for now, that when I take a break and show Yu-Gi-Oh, I'm just going to show it 90 degrees rotated. So you would just have to rotate your screen to see it, which, yeah, I think that works fine enough for most people. It only really hurts people with computer monitors that are not rotatable, that are in vertical format, which, yeah, computers would be the only issue there, certainly. Yeah. And yeah, it being Christmas, I imagine nothing really big has happened video game news wise. We did have in the last stream a real human being died in a car accident, and there was a lot of talk about that. Also, Steam was down on Christmas Day, which we got minor confirmation on that, although most people were not on the internet, so it didn't probably affect too many people. And as such, there was definitely a little bit of catch up we're going to do today. Although I don't know how much catch up really we're going to do. We may very well, my macros may have caught the new games on Steam and just not opened them on Wednesday. Which, if that is the case, then fine. We'll just have missed games that launched on Wednesday, Monday, and late Monday and Tuesday, which would have been just about nothing. Vampire Survivors now is very much like Binding of Isaac Rebirth. I don't think it's as old by any means as Rebirth and Binding of Isaac in general, so there's still probably a ton more content in Binding of Isaac, but yeah, I am in a weird position now where going back and playing the newest DLC, the next DLC that I haven't covered, would feel fairly repetitive after playing Vampire Survivors. And Vampire Survivors, I think, is touching upon an aspect that I have said in the past many times, and that Vampire Survivors is just a little bit more general audience friendly, whereas Binding of Isaac has a lot of satanic imagery and child abuse imagery, and so that loses it some audience, I think. And I still think that they should just take Binding of Isaac and reskin it to look something like Link's Awakening or a Zelda game in general, and it would sell like hotcakes. That being said, if we scroll down this chart of the Steam 24-hour concurrent peak player base, I see Binding of Isaac. I don't see Vampire Survivors. I can help being second probably hurts it. Also, being the fact that there's a lot of Survivors clones now is hurting it. And yeah, as such. And one of the ironies I think about Vampire Survivors is I'm not sure we're ever actually going to see a vampire in the game. So take a moment before we leave this page to see what it looks like with the font turned up a little bit as far as readability. And then I'll reload the page, and this is what it looks like with the font by default. You can see that it's a little bit smaller, a little bit harder to read. There definitely is room for improvement. The font size is hard-coded to this page specifically, or this website specifically. So, yeah. Now, on a cell phone, holding this close to my face, it probably is still very viewable and readable, but yeah. If there's room to make something bigger, we should make something bigger. I'm being reminded on just how much I modified Steam pages to make the YouTube Shorts, and how much I struggled to make everything as big as possible and take up every single pixel and every single bit of text to either not be shown at all because it wasn't relevant, or to be shown in a nice big size so that it could be seen quickly and easily, and read easily. And that is the struggle that we'll have to do with all of these pages in the video game news. But also we are targeting slightly different formats, so I can't just eliminate everything. Like, at some level, maybe just the pictures would make sense if we were doing something really crazy and we were just going to move everything around. So if there was, for instance, if this was the what you saw in the vertical, it's just these pictures, and then this is what you saw in the horizontal, something, it would have to be something kind of like that. That might work, and it wouldn't have to actually be the same starting point. Even it could be, we could do this in the horizontal and then just the pictures in the vertical, but then that would have to be a specific setup for that specific web page, or it would have to be redoing everything in a weird way, or redoing every single page so that it would work that way. I think either way it would be a lot of work. Yeah. And then again, this is what Steam pages look like at the moment, I believe. We'll reload just to double check. That was something I was supposed to make a YouTube short on, I think. And with this setup, and with my screen the way it is, the need for moving things up, I think, gets backburnered as a concept, because it just doesn't really need to happen. If I can see, on average, all the way down to whether it supports English or not on a page, then I am in such a good position at that point that all I really need to do is make the buttons and convert to checklists. The buttons are going to be added to the follow list, and then make a YouTube short file and automatically download the YouTube short file to then be used by OBS later, possibly right after I'm done streaming, to make YouTube shorts in possibly a fully automated way, but probably not fully automated. But yeah, the goal definitely will be to potentially make YouTube shorts and upload them instantly as soon as possible. That makes a lot of sense, since these are games that are frankly brand new. Not this game particularly, but most YouTube shorts are brand new. And yeah, the mature adult content plugin still could use a button to change the CSS back to showing images. But yeah, I'm trying to kind of reduce the amount of stuff I do. So yeah, here we have another page. One of the things about being at that resolution is that I'm not having to manipulate the zoom in Firefox, and we can see that manipulating the zoom in Firefox only works so well. Yeah. Again, I would imagine that there is just not that much different as far as the most wishlisted games. Yeah. I don't think that there is a real thing to happen that would change, that would make you want to wishlist different games around Christmas, or even be on Steam around Christmas. Yeah. Now I guess if we looked at this day in history, this is something I probably should adjust the font size, because I think in particular if I raise the font size up to 150% on this page in particular, you can see that that becomes way easier to read and works pretty well. Not ever having a consistent length of titles is going to squeeze it a little bit, but yeah, this I think works very nicely, and that is just a font size change. So yeah, guess what I want to do is probably, yeah, leave one of every page to work on, and I haven't done that so far, so let's just go ahead and undo closing of that tab, and then undo closing of that tab. I also need to adjust smooth scrolling, I think, too. Yeah. But yeah, this is very herky-jerky, I saw when watching the videos. It did feel very, very herky-jerky scrolling like this. Let's just see if we can adjust that. We'll go to Magic the Gathering for a second here, and you can see what the rotation of the screen looks like while I adjust the settings in Firefox to use smooth scrolling. Not really sure why I didn't use smooth scrolling by default, other than I just don't think it actually worked. And there was a Logitech thing. Why do we not have hardware acceleration when available? Auto scrolling. Smooth scrolling. Let's turn on auto scrolling and see what that looks like. Alright. So, yeah. I assume there's kind of a slow speed up and a slower, a scaling up on the speed, and a sloping up, sloping down on the speed when you're scrolling. This doesn't feel particularly smoother, and I don't know what auto scrolling is. Yeah, that almost feels like that would be the right move, is to just let pages auto scroll, but I don't know how you would activate that. Let me just quickly Google that. Activate Firefox. Now, for some things, this wouldn't work. If we were watching a video and it was slowly scrolling. It says it's just clicking the middle mouse button. Alright. Alright, well, clicking the middle mouse button didn't work for me. Yeah, because the gesture middle mouse buttons are probably capturing that. Sorry. Is there perhaps a new gesture I could make that would do something new. This is Gesterly, I believe, is the extension here. Scroll page up. So scroll to the top, scroll to page down, scroll page up. Yeah. And there's all kinds of gestures that do all kinds of things. Maybe execute a script might make sense. But yeah, there doesn't seem to be a default built-in option to enable auto scrolling. Yeah. Alright, so I won't mess with that any further. Yeah, there was a time, certainly, where you could put the middle mouse button down and then go downward and it would auto scroll, at least in Chrome. And who knows, there might be a way to just inject JavaScript to scroll down automatically. I hadn't thought of that. That might be a thing also. So for specific pages like this day in history, when there always, or almost always, is a long list, then that specific page would scroll down. But when we're like looking at a video on Gamatsu or looking on a Steam page, those wouldn't have the script, and so they wouldn't scroll. And that context sensitive concept does make a lot of sense to do it that way. Obviously I have a lot of ideas, and I'm only capable of actually starting / finishing a tiny percentage of them. I have been doing a lot other than playing Vampire Survivors as far as cleaning and decluttering, and so I'm kind of happy with the amount of progress there, but there's still a lot of work. And I still have a ton of paper wasps. A new wave of paper wasps decided to hatch, apparently. I assume that they are either outside getting through a crack in my wall, or they are in my roof, which is also very possible. And they're very lethargic as it is winter and cold at the moment, but they are still flying around. Now they say if you kill a wasp, it releases a scent that causes more wasps to come, and I think at this point I'm just saying bring it on, because my intention here is to kill all the wasps within a 100-foot radius of my house. But I don't know how far they would really travel to make new nests or not, but yeah. It is something I was thinking would have been more of a thing. So yeah, here we can see that with the custom art out of the picture. Oh yeah, and that I totally have forgotten about the fact that I was planning on changing how the macro ran and stop using the macro altogether, and that is something else I have not worked on. Yeah. So yeah, I don't know which one of these this day in history is. I just scrolled down. It's still a little small. Like, you would like to see the pictures bigger. You would like this to jump out more. this day in history does really feel like it is not showing any useful information. I probably should take this day in history and make one of my scrolls that one thing instead of the exact same sources of video game news in both scrolls. But there is also a desire to get away from using the desktop scroll completely and doing it internally in OBS. And I'm not sure I can really do that. It might be something that can be done now with Advanced Scene Switcher. But yeah, the more programs I can eliminate or unify into one setup, the better. Particularly moving over to Bakelite Linux, which is the plan. Yeah, desktop scroll bar or whatever it's called may not work even with compatibility APIs like Proton. The thing that the desktop scroll bars are doing is it's getting multiple XML RSS feeds and putting them one after another, and so that might be the thing that proves to be fairly difficult overall. But yeah, I guess if I got this day in history set up as an XML feed, I might consider stop scrolling down these pages. It would save me a little bit of time. But yeah, Video Games Chronicle here with no modifications is a bright eyesore. Speaking of eyesores, I have confirmed that there is a dead pixel, and only one dead pixel. Well, it's probably closer to 20 or 30 pixels all in one spot on my monitor. And I don't think there's really anything I can do to fix that. Trying to do anything runs the risk of breaking the monitor worse. It literally looks like the liquid crystals just ran dry in that spot. Maybe there was a bug there, maybe there was a bit of dust, but yeah, it does just seem like that's the case as far as how that goes. It could be damage somewhere else, but I don't think so. The irregularness of the shape, because it's not a perfect square of the dead pixels, really implies to me that the liquid crystals are there. And maybe it would fix itself over time. My TV says it only has 77 hours on it when I looked yesterday. Of course, that almost certainly could be reset if this was a refurb thing. But yeah, it does just look like this TV may have been sitting in a warehouse and may have gotten banged around in shipping, and that might have broken that pixel in that one spot, or it may have been defective to begin with and it may have been refurbed. I don't know why we're specifically sitting on Gaming on Linux here, but yeah. Then all the new games on Steam might be something we need to look at. This page in particular needs help. A lot of help, I think. Yeah. If we bump this up to 150%, it is much more readable. There's a little bit of dead space at the top here of something that's probably being hidden, and it pops up a revenue bar that is getting clipped off at the bottom here. Why is the bottom getting clipped off? That may just be the preview. Yeah. I'm getting down to 23 on this list, and the preview over here only gets down to really 21 in the beginnings of 22. So there's another row and probably 2 more rows worth of space that's being clipped off at the bottom there. Probably doesn't matter, but it is interesting. As far as playing mobile games, I'm still doing a little bit of Pokemon TCG, still playing Memento Mori, but I can happily announce that for the past couple of days I have not played any Modica Magica. And I also found out that another Modica Magica anime movie is coming out in theaters in Japan pretty soon, so there is a growing realization here that if I want to watch Modica Magica, I just need to watch the animes and not engage with mobile games that aren't really going to add anything, and they're going to require you to grind and do dailies, for particularly if the games are not fun. And so yeah, I'm actively trying to break myself of the habit of playing this game and just abandoning it, so I'll get down to just playing Pokemon TCG and Memento Mori. Speaking of anime, I also had a bit of self-control in that Golden Boy, a lewd anime comedy series from I believe the 90s, is available on Blu-ray and was on sale. It's like 3-hour OAV, selling for like $20, so you're not getting the biggest of sales, but then it is also anime, and anime tends to be rarer and more expensive. I already own Golden Boy on DVD, and that was a big factor too, is that I really don't think it's worthwhile to buy things that aren't animated exceptionally well. Usually that would be things that were made to be released in theaters. I just don't think that there's a great reason to jump from DVD to Blu-rays that might be the exact same transfers or even worse transfers, or even 4K. There is even question about Perfect Blue, which is coming out in 4K, whether that is really a new film transfer or is it just AI upscaling, because one is considerably less acceptable than the other. And then the bigger question is, does it actually improve anything? So yeah, the general desire is to not buy the same thing over and over again, although I have done that for some movies like Akira, which was made in theaters, but those are small exceptions in my mind, not the end-all plan. Most anime is not going to make it to 4K UHDs, which is probably fine. So here's the problem with some of the bottom being clipped off, is I almost was not able to scroll all the way down to the bottom of this tab. So I need to address that in some way, whether it's adding more buffer at the top or bottom, probably at the bottom, or it's doing something else. But yeah, it does definitely feel like we still are very close to the end of all physical media. And the good news there is that most physical media that I have, I already have. Bad news there is my eyesight's getting terrible, and the time I have left to actually watch any of this physical media is ending. Yeah. It definitely is going to be a case where there's just going to be a pretty cool anime collection that hopefully somebody actually inherits and doesn't just get sold off and or tossed. Unfortunately, I think there is I think more people who might inherit my anime collection might toss it than keep it. Moving on, Steam hardware sales will change pretty quickly here. This is another one where I suppose if we made the font bigger, probably wouldn't help too much. You could maybe make it a little bit bigger, but this part here in particular is already overflowing at this resolution as far as the charts go, because all these charts are dynamically getting squished down. Still don't care about my trending chart, but we can point out now that at this resolution you can actually see the text, whereas in the last experiment you couldn't see the text. There still is a lot being chopped up there. This works perfectly, and probably in the next week Balatro will also fall off recently played, and it will just be Vampire Survivors. You can see it says I'm 57 minutes into 57 hours into playing it. That's probably not accurate at all. It never really is. Vampire Survivors does occasionally have some audio issues and some of it may just be my computer, because there definitely have been times even when audio struggles in previous streams over the past years. There's gotta be a ton more to do in Vampire Survivors. If I only have 110 out of 243 achievements, there's just still, I imagine, a ton of hidden things. Still have not seen this character at all. Yeah. We're by this time next year almost certainly going to hit a 10,000 hours of running Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel in the background. And I guess now that I had heard that the original creator of Yu-Gi-Oh! Has passed away, maybe that is part of the reason why Yu-Gi-Oh! Has not really done anything new recently. It would be crazy for them to come out with yet another game, but they have made so many Yu-Gi-Oh! Games already, it kind of does make sense. I don't think it's going to be Yu-Gi-Oh! Rush. Beyblade X is apparently a new anime series, and that may be an attempt to bring back Beyblade or evolve it into something more. So we may see that similar trend happen on Yu-Gi-Oh! In the next 4 years or so. Oh yeah, and the project that was trying to save/restore Reboot was able to find the weird device that they needed to scan the masters in, because the masters were saved in this like proprietary digital tape format, and there was only so many tape readers ever made, so they were able to save that footage of all of the Reboot series. They're still trying to scan in all of the extras, and they're going a step beyond just taking the masters and scanning in the masters, in that they're editing some editing mistakes too, which I hope they're keeping the raw masters safe. It would be crazy to lose the masters a second time after scanning them in. But yeah, there are some other shows from that same now defunct company, like Transformers Beast Wars, I think is one of them, that companies own the rights to those, but they don't seem to actually own the master tapes to them, or maybe they have the master tapes but couldn't scan them in themselves. So that restoration lost media project could keep going to save some of those other animations. Those animations were early CGI, so they're very unique in their art style. There probably is less than a dozen shows though that were saved in that format, so yeah, if all of them got saved, that would be great. One assumes it would all be re-released and sold if somebody still owns the rights to it, where Reboot itself might be closer to public domain. It may just be released overall. But it is nice to see a lost media restoration project succeed. This is another case where text going larger probably wouldn't help too much. The winter sale's still going on until January 5th, so there's plenty of time to buy something if you so wanted to buy something. And this would be another page where auto scrolling might be helpful. Yeah. Maybe the move is to not auto scroll at all and just hit page down. Is that the smarter way to do things? Just hit page down and do that. They still are highlighting the top sellers first, not popular new releases. It does seem like something is taking longer than I thought it would to load up. Again, upcoming. And yeah, you get less in this chart at 19 by 20. There's definitely fewer things being highlighted, but it does feel like it fits. It doesn't feel like it's just clipping something off. Yeah, this is taking forever. See, this might be where the hardware acceleration is a mistake, and I shouldn't use hardware acceleration when available. Yeah, I think I've gone back and forth on that thought several times. We have new Steam Decks refurbs. We can try and reload the page and show that. There's perhaps, even if I zoom it to 150 though, it doesn't quite fit. You get this black bar on the sides. So that's a page that could possibly use some tweaks. Yeah, I still heavily suspect we will never see any refurbed LCDs again, and very possibly we'll never see any LCDs again at all. I wouldn't be surprised if the certified refurbished Steam Deck page gets forwarded to a certified refurbished Steam Machine and Steam Frame page also. This page doesn't look terrible, but there is something up at the top here that's getting squeezed, this top bar. So you've got a top bar that's being squeezed up here and not quite fitting. So not the most played game overall, but Vampire Survivors is the 23rd most played game on Steam Deck. Still below Binding of Isaac Rebirth though. So I think that probably does highlight that there is a slight difference as to what people are playing on the Steam Deck versus what people are playing on the computer, the PC itself. Yeah, I guess I really don't have too much to say there. Yeah, today feels rough as far as what we've gone through so far. It just feels like it's a lot of work to spend an hour to really ramble and do just about nothing. One sec while I adjust myself in the chair. The chair is killing me too. Yeah. For the most part, this whole room redecorating, moving of furniture, I think has worked pretty well. I think there's still probably room for improvement. I was able to find a nice big rectangular. Why did that jump all the way to the top? Oops. I was able to find a nice big rectangular box to stick under my bed to put more smaller things and use it as a storage container. But yeah, if I can save $20 by not buying some kind of custom thing on casters that would roll out from under the bed, that's probably for the better. Boxes will do just as well. I guess Blueprints would be the only game I would think about maybe grabbing, but also I just don't like. I don't feel like spending a lot more money. The credit card store card for Amazon is already pretty high because I bought those 3 subwoofers, and so that was an extra expense, and things were just in general expensive, and buying a lot of boring things like this pressure relieving air mattress chair thing all ran up the price too. Again, the chart, yeah, I don't know why this is jumping back up like it is. But yeah, the chart is ending at 98 there. Not going anywhere as far as I think it should. Alright, now it brings us to Video Games Chronicles articles, but I think all we have here is a Merry Christmas post, and yes, it is a huge eyesore. The problem here, I will show, is that if I turn the CSS on without tweaking it, it looks more like a Steam page, but all the text is cropped. And I should have worked on that, and I didn't work on it at all. I wonder if this isn't just the 3, maybe 4 people. If there is a person behind his head, I'm not sure there is. I guess there isn't. The table seems to extend further that way. So this is just like the 3 people that run Video Games Chronicles. But yeah, you'd be shocked what 3 or less people can really accomplish as far as running a website for video game news, particularly if you have connections. That's a big thing that will help if you're in the right location and you can meet with game developers and publishers, and you have those connections. That can be super helpful too. Otherwise too, you also need to just haul and work really hard to have as many interviews and exclusive articles as you can have. Now you can see how annoying Video Games Chronicles Uncensored is just this banner, $5, give us $5 to go ad free. Notice that there aren't any ads still though, because my router is still blocking ads. Plus uBlock Origin is also enabled at the moment. But yeah, that is what it looks like in its current form. Because if we turned off uBlock Origin on this, then this is what it would look like without uBlock Origin's cosmetic filters, which is what I was using before. So all these gray boxes are being blocked by the router, and then the rest of this is being blocked by uBlock Origin. And it really goes to show just how much nonsense is on these pages. How much irrelevant, unimportant, not related to the actual news article content is wasting your bandwidth and taking up RAM. And in fairness, I'm not sure how much of RAM is actually being saved. Just because something is being told to be rendered invisible doesn't mean it isn't being downloaded and it isn't being saved into memory. But yeah, I think that is probably the only Video Games Chronicle article for today, and possibly the new year. Yeah. You could buy a bundle like this and get the remake of Myst once again and blueprints. It's just not very discounted, and that's why I skipped it. But probably shouldn't. Almost certainly, like summer sale, the next summer sale, I'll probably want to grab blueprints at that point. Oh, I also went through here and tried to adjust some of these, and you can see with minimal success I have adjusted some of these title cards. The thing that's weird about these Google PowerPoint slides, which is all these are, is that there really isn't a font size so much to it. It is just like dynamically squeezing itself. So I was changing it one way and then probably needed to change it another way, and then I probably need to think a third way to change it to get the text to fit either a lot better or maybe even just reword some of this. Yeah, which I could certainly do that too. Now, it is a very low priority to fix these interstitial cards though. They are really just slight markers, chapter markers, and that's it. So here's what Gamatsu looks like without any of its CSS being changed, which that's with uBlock Origin turned off. So we have an actual story here. The VTuber Rika Hanamiya visual novel Rika Mode has been announced. And that's this part here is all the information, really. And then the rest of this is just unnecessary stuff. Again, if I turn the CSS on, the text here still needs tweaking. Deer Flower for Switch launches April 30th. In Japan, is currently available for PC. Yeah. So what I would want to do is, like, right click always does something. Left click on nothing does nothing. Middle mouse button does nothing. So if I would want things to load, why is this trailer not loaded? That's an interesting question. Yeah, I don't think anything should be blocking the trailer loading. But yeah, it's just fully black. Yeah, I'd have to find something that would do page down automatically. And I don't know how that would work. You can see this game is positive on Steam and does support English as a visual novel. And yes, I have not figured out how, I've not worked on speeding up the slideshow again. Everything is pretty much well formatted, but yeah, there's still some stuff being clipped off the bottom. Really shouldn't be the case. Let's see. Stardew Valley Nintendo Switch 2 edition is now available. We'll leave it at that. Stardew Valley, overwhelmingly positive on Steam. Although a game I found fairly annoying. Just not really my cup of tea. So this is interesting that they're asking me to write a review. Dragon Quest X Online version 8.0 expansion launches June 25th in Japan. Okay. And again, we have videos embeds that are not showing. I have no idea why video embeds would not be showing. Let's see, if I was to turn off that. That didn't do anything. And if we were to turn off that. Yeah, so something about this, which there's barely any code in this at all, is not working with the video player. And so that's something we need to address also. See, that's the annoying part here, is that there's just going to be a lot of custom tweaking. The Famitsu sales have been updated from the 15th to the 21st. In this format in particular, it's going to be extremely hard to read the sales numbers, and this definitely goes to show where my CSS tweaks came in and saved the day. It is the same old story, though. Nintendo is severely dominating the sales numbers in Japan, and PlayStation is barely selling well at all. Although it does seem like the PlayStation 5 Digital Edition did particularly well in that week. When you start to combine like Switch 1 OLEDs and Switch 2s and Switch Lights and Switches, they're lots bigger numbers than PS5 Digital, PS5 Pro, and PS5. Then Xbox barely selling anything, and PS4 I assume is not really available. I'd assume that the 12 units, and that's actually 12 units that sold of the PS4, are units that are sitting around in really small shops, and that's it. Fruit Mountain Party is coming to the Switch 1 and 2 in spring of 2026. I assume this isn't the fruit slicing game, but it might be. And I guess in general, if we weren't trying to rush today, I would consider doing something more. This is a positively reviewed but overall irrelevant game. It seems like it has only 10 reviews on it. It's been out since August. You can see it's throwing its early access for the type of game that really shouldn't be early access. That's probably hurting it too. If it came out on August 28th, I saw it on June 4th and made a YouTube short on it. Let's see, Gang of Dragons Steam page updated with new screenshots. Okay. At the moment, it would be easier to look at the screenshots here. This is one of my concerns in particular, is that the way the pages are being depicted right now with the two columns probably need some custom work, because I really would prefer the screenshots to be taking up one column like that. Which, yeah, I think that looks a lot better. That does then go back to the idea of scrolling and putting things back up to the top. But yeah, I do think that that is probably the better way to do it for these pages. We'll adjust things so that this picture is at least centered if we did it that way. And honestly, that wouldn't be too far away from just making YouTube shorts anyways. Which I still don't think it makes any sense though to have YouTube shorts made while streaming, because that would be 3 minutes for every single game, and that would be crazy. Unless it could happen in the background, and there's no way it could happen in the background. That would take too much processing power, too much GPU power. Simple series for Nintendo Switch 2 Volume 1, The Mahjong, has been announced. I don't know what Simple series is supposed to be, but well, sounds like a Mahjong game. And yeah, plenty of Mahjong games come out. Yeah, today's not a particularly good stream as far as quality goes. I know. Apologies. I should have worked harder and not just played Vampire Survivors, which it speaks to how fun Vampire Survivors are. This is the first time I probably have been having fun in a very long time, if not the first time for 2025, which is a horribly sad statement to say that 11 out of 12 months was fairly boring. There was bits of fun here and there, but I don't feel like 2025 was the year where I found a good game to really enjoy all the way through for a long haul. Um, Moving on, Exist Archive, The Other Side of the Sky, is going to be delisted on January 1st for the PS4 in Japan and January 5th for the PS Vita. I didn't know PS Vita had any services even running in the background. Yeah. I didn't know you could delist things from the Vita. I thought the Vita had just been shut down. Let's see. Natsumi Atari is going to change its name to Winning Entertainment Group on January 1st, 2026. I don't know this company. The parent company of Tingo Project. Yeah. Apparently they make... I don't know what. Yeah. It says this is related content, but these are just the exact same stories we've already seen from the same day. I don't think there's any connection. Moving on. Tanuki Pawn Summer has been delayed to 2026. These are live games I don't even recognize. But apparently I saw this on May 31st. Fantasy Li-Fi, The Girl Who Steals Time, free major update to Sinister Broker's Bizarre Schemes is now available. Front Mission 3 Remake is coming to the PS4 and 5, Xbox One and Series P and PC on January 30th. I suppose it is worth pointing out that I probably couldn't just undo everything I've done at this point. I probably made so many tweaks and not done any kind of backing up that going back to widescreen format streaming, I feel like is not possible. Fantasy Li-Fi is overwhelmingly positive. And still, it is the game I don't really recognize as the game I'm thinking about when I see that name. And here we have Gaming on Linux, and I don't think I changed this one, and weirdly, I think by not changing this one, it worked just fine. So, again, maybe I made things worse instead of making things better. That'll bring us to Gaming on Linux articles, which we may not have very many of those. Yep. Proton Experimental brings improvements to Farlight 84, Chrono Trigger, and more. Again, you can see just how awful Gaming on Linux looks. This is not by coincidence that you see so many websites and pages looking like this. It is all just the same underlying website builders doing the exact same thing over and over again. And that is probably why, in part, these websites are so bad, is that you have the people who are actually making articles not actually having to look at the articles in a browser the way an average person would look at it. They are simply making this part here, and then they are submitting it to a content management service software that is then making the rest of this, which just fills up your screen with absolute garbage. ADHD mentality of just how many links can we squeeze at once onto it. Inherently, part of the problem is that you had a lot of people who wanted to be journalists or were journalists, as in putting actual articles in newspapers, school papers, or real newspapers. And then all of those jobs disappeared, and so then you have all these journalists having to move to being web journalists and learning the internet when they really had no interest or desire to learn the internet, which I think hit a lot of people in a lot of careers, is that all of a sudden the internet was the only way you could make a living, or the only way you could keep doing what you were doing. And now we may be past that phase, and now the internet may be increasingly irrelevant as it's being filled with AI slop, and as fewer and fewer people are actually going to individual websites. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if 15 years down the line, websites like Gaming on Linux, Komatsu, and Video Games Chronicles, and similar websites to those, all shut down because they just cannot afford, even with ads and Patreons, to even pay for the hosting of these kinds of websites. Although they're stabbing themselves in the foot too. Like, the bandwidth cost and hosting costs would be considerably less if you weren't flooding every page with ads. Anyways, that would bring us to GameDeveloper.com, but I don't think we have any GameDeveloper.com articles. Instead, we have, where are the tags here? Yeah, we have this game, Canto Girls, which at first look seems like it is a adult game, harem game, and yeah, I think that's exactly what it is. It's a cheesecake game that is just not being tagged, and thus not being caught by my adult content warning. And then we have Nova Atlantis. I assume these are just new games that came out on Steam. Yeah, we again have old new games on Steam, looking fine as it is. Right, so we'll go through all the new games on Steam quickly. If I am swiping this way, I'm leaving it open. If I'm really interested in it, I am going to put it on the follow list. I'm still trying to get some of these kid-friendly games, early childhood friendly games, Arthur reading games. I doubt they're ever really going to be on sale though. They put a whole bunch more of these out on Christmas, or the day after Christmas. It's like the absolute worst time to put something like that out. I can pretty much tell you that there's very little chance that people got Steam gift cards and the day later or the day of are going to Steam and downloading games. Your mom, it says partial nudity, so I will drag that to that direction, and then what? So that doesn't really help either. That's nothing. The good news about HTML and the DOM object model that they use is that it doesn't really matter how I change how it looks. My macros and UI vision will more than likely still work. There's only one command that I've never actually used in UI vision that tries to visually verify objects by what a web page looks like. It is all doing it by underlying code, and the code doesn't change if the appearance of the website changes, which I guess that is the idea of custom style sheets or custom style scripts, whatever CSS actually stands for. Yeah. You may just see a lot of visual novels today as far as games coming out. And yeah, the plan here is for the stream to not go that long. And if I get really lucky, I won't need to take a bathroom break. I'm trying to rush through this. Use the pressure to motivate me to move faster. It does seem like there's more nonsense games that were released in this time frame. I wouldn't be surprised if people rightfully guessed that if you submit a game during this Christmas break, you might be having your game evaluated by some holiday employee, temporary employee, who might let things through a lot more. I doubt you're motivated or in any way to say no to a game. And so, if I was a holiday employee working at Valve or working at some kind of center that had been contracted really by Valve, my first instinct would be to say yes to basically every game, because saying yes would be a great way to get through the process and get numbers up. That being said, I imagine there are some standards that are being held here. We aren't seeing just absolute live action porn games sneaking through, which Valve has a very hard stance, an absolute no on those kinds of games, which those do exist. I just don't think they're particularly quality. Yeah, it's a little too much work to make a lot of those. Yeah, we're seeing a couple of somewhat interesting things, but like any other period, it is mostly nonsense, mostly garbage games. We really would be in quite the pickle if it turned out that there were 20 games worth playing coming out every week. That would be more than I could play by far. It'd be more than most could play. It would force me to have to collab with groups of people. Here we have another game that looks like a RPG Maker type visual novel thing, but the name Brainwashing Academy definitely feels like it might have had an adult uncensored patch somewhere. Yeah. The corruption fetish, brainwashing fetish, is pretty prominent. Ear training. I played a game similar to this without actually showing the notes, and I sucked at it, but I'm going to put it on the follow list. This may also be a game that's free. Yeah. That's another issue, certainly, is that if I'm going to get the pages to look like this, it might very well need to move this up somehow. Which, that can be done, it'll just take more work. So let's say tower defense game. Doesn't look terrible for a tower defense game. Though I don't think I'd ever play one. And again, we are trying to rush. And for all we know, there is I assume this one doesn't support English. Nope. Didn't really need to scroll down that much to see it. So the hope for the weekend is definitely to work on formatting more stuff. Yeah. Just have a better format of at least Steam pages by Monday, and have a better balance overall on not just playing Vampire Survivors. Yeah, there's the audio clipping out again. Which it really makes me wonder if that isn't a problem with my microphone. I also have a slight thought. My new monitor has a headphone audio out. If I used that, there probably would be a significant delay in the audio I was hearing in my headphones. Yes, but it might work better because it would mean that I am hearing the audio with the noise reduction filter, which has been a long-running issue, and that I haven't had the noise reduction filter audible to me, so what people were hearing versus what I was hearing is a very different thing. Here's another game that almost certainly has an adult filter, just assuming by the size of the character's boobs there, and the fact that it is almost certainly an outfit that has been overlaid to cover up the size of the boobs somewhat, or the sweater has been added to cover up cleavage. Yeah. How many more games do we have to go through? Okay. It does seem like it's a rather long list of games. Yeah. So I need to take a bathroom break, and so that makes a lot of sense. We'll pause the recording here, and then we'll go through the rest of the games after the break. Be right back. Okay, I'm back. Sorry about that. Yeah, a couple of things. Uh, it seems like the swipe up notification happens as soon as the screen turns black for even a few frames. So potentially fading in from one screen to another might cause it to happen, but yeah. I don't know if there's a great way in which I can stop it to happen because it doesn't seem like the text scroll bars at the top stop it from happening either. Um, I also noticed on Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel that, yeah, there's still a little bit being cropped off. So, yeah, I looked it up. YouTube says for vertical streaming you should be doing 1080 by 1920. But for my cell phone in particular, I think there is, oh, particularly for my cell phone, there might be some edge stuff. I don't know. Like, I know one of my cell phones had edge screens curvature on them, but I don't think this one does. But yeah, it definitely seems like there needs to be some margin on the edges, which they tell you exactly not to do that. And I basically have to say YouTube is just lying and doesn't know what they're talking about on their own system. Also, look down at the metal part of my watch, the little peg that goes through the band to hold the band into place, and it is already starting to rub off paint, which, yeah, for a $10 watch, that's to be expected. The battery life, however, looks amazing. I haven't had to charge my watch since the first time in weeks. Of course, I also don't have it with the feature that turns on the screen every time I tilt it, but I do have it with a feature that will test my blood pressure every hour, on the hour, and seemingly it will keep on testing if it is below a certain heart rate. It doesn't test blood pressure, it tests heart rate. It does test blood pressure, but it doesn't do it automatically. I wish it did. So I guess that's somewhat helpful if you are in the middle of having a bad heart rate, and then I guess that's called arrhythmia, isn't it? Yeah. But yeah, having a bad heart rate, constantly monitoring it might be helpful. Maybe, maybe not. Of course, none of that has to do with looking at the video games that came out on Steam, as far as the watch, but I did notice that. And yeah, there's nothing going on otherwise on the internet on slick deal sales. Which, yeah, if the internet was more interesting, I would spend a lot less time on slickdeals.net looking for sales, I think. And I could certainly seek out maybe some more interesting stuff. I'm pretty bored with a lot of my old podcasts to the point where I'm wondering whether I even want to stick to podcasts and RSS feeds, or if it is now really the era of video casts and everything just being on YouTube. Speaking of YouTube, I also have managed to unsubscribe from a couple of people. There you have some furry characters. This is obviously a furry visual novel dating sim game. It's one of the trending upcoming games. A lot of the YouTube channels I'm subscribed to too are getting fairly boring. I guess there is a real argument to be made that it is kind of crazy to expect people to be consistent in quality or consistent in upload. But yeah, there are definitely a lot of YouTubers that upload once a month at most, if not even once a year. And then maybe they do a good job on what they do upload, but maybe it is just kind of crazy. This is weird, a multi-tiered game. This is nothing. This is probably nothing. Of course, it is contradictory to some extent, at least, to say I'm bored and I'm not getting enough entertainment, and then also have all the entertainment in the world in the form of DVDs and streaming and not engaging with it, and then also have a ton of work to do. Yeah. Inherently, I guess I'm just never fully comfortable in one spot and constantly just want to do something different. Just never really happy. Never truly 100% happy. Yeah. Which I guess keeps me from being stagnant and keeps me doing things. Yeah. But I generally do wish I had less to do. Yeah. I do wish things just worked a little bit easier. Worked on the first try. I also wish that I wasn't always yawning at the end of these. So here we have a backrooms type game, but you have an actual gun and there's an anime girl, so that's something different. Evolving those repetitively made games. Yeah. Suppose there is a small chance that some people would be watching this, that the views might go up today, but I doubt it. If I do get a lot of views, apologies for the terrible state that the visuals are in. We'll hopefully again over the weekend I'll work on that more, hopefully, and be close to being done. It is mostly garbage games that came out, and considering the amount of games and considering that it's Christmas weekend, I would suspect that sorry, I'm yawning again. I would suspect that we're fully caught up in the new games that came out on Steam. Yeah, you know, I have to admit, Doing these extra streams, though, may be exhausting me and may be pushing me more to want to just play Vampire Survivors. Although I think, really, it's just 100% I want to play Vampire Survivors. But if I could make these live streams take less time, I probably would do something else a little bit more productive. That being said, YouTube was pushing live streaming for a long time. Maybe they aren't pushing live streaming as much, but I still think it makes a lot more sense to push live streams. It's definitely not the case that my pre-recorded footage is getting anywhere as many views. And now the fact that they're pushing vertical live streams does really imply that they are still pushing live streams overall. It is interesting, I would say, that we made it here to the end of the year and TikTok still hasn't officially been acquired or sold off parts of itself, although it seems like some kind of deal, probably not any deal that would actually change too much, is going to have TikTok be bought out by a US company, or the US market at least. But yeah, apparently I didn't change this one. And there's that weird inconsistency there. So yeah, I might have actually been able to rush, but there's no reason to rush and to not take a break. If TikTok did go away, people stopped using TikTok, then who knows, maybe that would drastically change the experience of how YouTube focuses and how YouTube does things. Alright, well, it was a very rough show. I am in a very rough state, to say the least, and we'll leave it at that. That's going to be it for this stream. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and keep on watching. Thanks.